Welcome to my weekly vlog where I tell you what I've read in the past week, what I'm currently reading, and what I hope to start reading as well. Hi, I'm Andrea and welcome to Fantastical Reads. I'm a newbie trying to make my way through the most recommended and beloved fantasy books, as well as discovering some of its hidden gems and underhyped books to share with you all. So if you're like me and really loving this genre, just join me on my journey and maybe we can share some of our opinions. Sadly, I did not go through all the books I was hoping to go through last week because I started school. And if you know anything about teachers, you know that their first week back after 2 months off makes us walk around like we're zombies in an apocalypse. So I was dead tired and continue to be and will continue to be for the next few weeks. But that doesn't mean I didn't read anything. But first, let me get through what I didn't have time to read. And that was to make any headway in The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch or Valor by John Gwynne, which I'm hoping to rectify in the next few days. But I did finish 2 books. The first of those 2 books is Starsight by Brandon Sanderson, which was the sequel to Skyward. And I did like this book, but I did not like it as much as the first book. And I will continue the series, just not at the moment. There's some other books I want to read ahead of time. And I'm a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. I obviously particularly love his Cosmere books, which I plan on going to in depth. But right now, I'm just going to put like a little bit of a stopper in this series. I loved it, and I shouldn't have been surprised because this is Brandon Sanderson we're talking about, but the world opened up in a big way in Starsight, and I did enjoy it, but we did lose out on some of our favorite characters from the first book. So I'm just going to wait until I finish a few other books before I get back to the finishing this initial trilogy, because the 4th is coming out in November. Now, I did say last week that I would likely start a book, and I was correct because I started the 3rd book in the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and that is The Last Argument of Kings. I just couldn't stay away from this world, and I did begin it, but I stopped about a quarter of the way through because I didn't like something that happened, and not in a bad way. It was just upsetting me. So I love Joe Abercrombie. Like everyone says, his characterization is like heads above so many other authors out there. I love the world we're in. I love the humor within this grimdark world. But I'm just worried about one of the characters. And so I just, last week was a lot, and I just had to put a pause on this. So I will be getting back to this book later this week. But I did start another book, and I actually finished it, and that is The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. It is the first book in the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy. Patrick Leo on his BookTube channel said this is one of the best debuts he's ever seen, and I would have to agree. So it was on his recommendation that I started this series. And it was a huge book, and I actually think, just like him, it is an amazing debut for an author. I did have a few, issues with it, I guess I'll say. I also did really enjoy it, and I'm invested, and I will be continuing the series. I just want to read a few other books before I get there as well. I loved Brian Lee Durfee's creation of his world. His world building is phenomenal. You are painted very vivid pictures of the 5 isles that encompass his world, and I just was blown away by this world building skill for a debut author. What I'm starting to realize as I'm reading more and more fantasy books is that many first books, be it in a longer series or in a trilogy, that there are almost like the setup, the foundation of the series. And that's what I feel is going on over here in The Forgetting Moon. A lot of chess pieces were put into play that I hear are going to be coming out like banging in the 2nd and 3rd book in this trilogy. And that is something that I can't wait to read. The few issues that I did have is, and I've heard this as well from other amazing booktubers on here, is that the pacing is a bit, clunky because there is a lot of repetition. This has a lot of fantasy tropes in it, and that is something I don't mind. For example, there's the prophecy trope. And Brian Lee Durfee tends to repeat a lot of these prophecies verbatim. So there's a lot of physical descriptions of the world that is repeated. There is a lot of the prophecies that are repeated. And that I felt by, the last third of the book was starting to drag on for me. And I wanted to just feel more connected to the characters. I am invested in this character and all these characters, but I want to feel more connected to them. And I'm hoping that is something that I will find in the 2nd and 3rd books in this trilogy. In addition, maybe this is a grim, dark thing. I haven't read enough to really find this, and I don't find this so much in Joe Abercrombie's books, but I'm not particularly thrilled with some of the depictions of women. I find them to be somewhat one-dimensional, and I'm hoping that will change. But all that said, it's not stopping me from wanting to see what happens in the final 2 books, and I will be continuing to read the series. So thank you, Patrick Leo, for this great recommendation, because I pretty much flew right through this book. actually started a different series. And yes, I know I have two books that I really should be reading, but I'm a bit of a mood reader. And when my brain was mush in the last week because of work, I just had to go with what my brain and heart were telling me. And that is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, which is the first book in her Winnowing Flame trilogy. This has been recommended a lot by Elliot Brooks and also by Patrick Leo, two people who I love watching. Especially Elliot, she mentions this book all the time and how much she loves it and how different it is. And I'm only about 150 pages into the first book, and I cannot help but agree. I can tell this is a series that I'm going to love. It's very different than anything I've ever read. It's a very different world than anything I've ever read, and it is quite funny already. And I cannot wait. That there's not much I can say about it right now. I'm really just in the beginning of it, but I can't wait to share my thoughts with it next week or when I do a full review of the trilogy. My plan for this week is to finish The Ninth Reign as well as finish The Last Argument of Kings and hopefully make headway in Valor and The Lies of Locke Lamora. But I don't know if that will actually come to fruition. I guess you'll have to just check in a week with me and see if that's what happened. Let me know what you're reading in the comments because I'm always looking to buddy read or to find new amazing fantasy books to read as well. Whatever it is that you're picking up, enjoy. And if you are liking the content and want to go on a journey with me, please like and subscribe. I would love to go on this journey with as many of you as possible. Have a great week, everyone.